Okay, I'm just going to introduce the next session. I'm Ian Hall. I'm the Associate Dean for Conferences. I'm responsible for this event, so if you've got anything you want to tell me about it, please do so, and please also do your feedback online afterwards. It's been a really successful and popular event, so I'm really pleased about that. I'm sorry if we turned any of your friends away. Next year we're going to have the Congress in London in a bigger venue, so hopefully we won't be turning people away then. We want, as always, to run a really high-quality programme, and we want it to be even better next year. So if you've got a really good idea for next year's Congress, please do suggest it to us, and we're opening the call for suggestions on the 27th of July. The next session is a conversation with Johnny Benjamin and his father, and it was suggested, someone who did put in a call, respond to the call last year, by Erin Turner, who's a consultant in early intervention psychiatry and chair of the West Midlands Expert Advisory Committee in that field. She's done lots of innovative things in medical education, including the use of theatre to educate doctors, and also innovation in practice. And it was at the launch of a new psychosis recovery app that she met Johnny Benjamin, the mental health activist. So I'm delighted to ask her to introduce Johnny and his father. Thank you, Erin.
Right, gosh, what an honour to be introducing the final keynote speakers, Johnny and Michael Benjamin. Is this clicker working? I'm not sure if the clicker's working. Yeah? Yeah. Johnny is a mental health campaigner. In his early 20s, he was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. During his first hospital admission, he ran away from hospital to Waterloo Bridge with the intention of ending his life. It was the kind words and hope offered him by a stranger that saved him. 6 years after the event, Johnny launched a successful social media campaign to find the stranger. And their reunion was the focus of a film called Stranger on the Bridge, and there is now a book entitled the same, Stranger on the Bridge. The stranger, who's called Neil Leyburn, works now with Johnny. They do mental health campaigning together. They talk to the NHS, go into schools, universities, and prisons. Johnny works tirelessly and has won many awards, including an MBE, and last year our college gave him the President's Medal. But above all, he's just a really top bloke. He is brave and kind, and one of the loveliest people I know. Psychosis, as we know, is really traumatic for families, especially if there's associated suicide. And often the family or carer's voice goes unheard. So today we're absolutely delighted that Johnny is going to be joined by his dad, Michael, so we can have his perspective. So please join me in giving them a really warm welcome onto stage, Johnny and Michael Benjamin. Okay, I'm hoping we're mic'd up. Can everyone hear us? Yeah? So, Johnny, you once said to me that you find psychiatrists the most intimidating audience to speak to. So we thought we would give you a really nice, kind of small, informal venue to help us. Are you feeling comfortable?
Yeah.
You'll get there.
Good.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time, so I really want to start by asking you if you can tell us what actually led you to your first hospital admission.
Yeah, so I was 20 when I was first hospitalised. I've been experiencing symptoms for a number of years. I had the Truman delusion, which is the belief that I was being watched by cameras and I was on this TV show. But I became psychotic just before I was admitted to hospital. I was a student in Manchester at university. began to believe that I was being possessed by the devil, and I went onto the streets, screaming, shouting, really unwell. And that led me to go to hospital, and in Manchester. And then I came down to London when my parents lived, to hospital. And when I was admitted to hospital in London, everything came out, and I was given my diagnosis, schizoaffective disorder. And that changed everything for me. That was for me, that was the end of the world when I was given that diagnosis.
So, Michael, it must have been a real shock for you. Had you got any inkling of an idea that Johnny was unwell at that time?
No, it was a big shock to us. We had no knowledge at all of mental health or mental health illness. We'd been to see him in Manchester. He was studying drama. He was in a very heavy play, which in his state didn't really help. Looking back at pictures now, we could see how gaunt he was. But at that time, we just thought it was just the rehearsals and everything else, and it wasn't until he got home that he wouldn't come out of his room for a couple of days and just locked himself away. So we had no idea at all. And of course you feel guilty because you have no idea.
Yeah, and families often say that they feel a mixture of emotions, guilt.
Yeah, you go through every emotion possible because, first of all, the biggest is the guilt, because why did I not know anything? Why did we not recognise anything? And I know it sounds ridiculous, but there's an embarrassment because you don't know how to handle it at all, and you don't even know how to tell people. After he went into hospital, it was actually Christmas, and we were supposed to be going over to people for Christmas Day, and he went in literally 2 or 3 days before Christmas. And we didn't really know how to tell people that Johnny was in hospital. Hasn't broken his leg or having an operation or like that. He's in hospital. Well, why is he in hospital? And you actually don't know what to say.
And talking about hospital, Johnny, I know you've had 4 hospital admissions. Can you talk us through a bit about that first hospital admission? What was that like for you?
It was really difficult because I was immediately put on suicide watch, and I mean, that's horrible. Everything's taken away from you, and then someone just comes and sits and watches you 24/7. Sometimes they don't say anything; they just kind of sit and just watch you. And I was frightened, and I was obviously suicidal, just hopeless. I think above all, I was scared. I was scared. There was a lack of information, and as my dad said, the embarrassment as well. I couldn't tell people where I was. I couldn't. I didn't have the words. I just didn't have the courage. I just couldn't. It was hopeless. Yeah.
Did you feel there was anything at all therapeutic about being in hospital that first time?
Yeah, I mean, there was, I remember there was a number of nurses, mental health nurses, that were just incredible. They would come and they would talk to me. They would actually really talk to me and try and engage with me and be positive, and they would come and sit by my bed and spend time with me, and having that was, it was a real lifeline, having that. But it wasn't regular, they'd come in maybe every few days, and but those moments of having that person there connecting with you, that made a huge difference. Yeah.
And what about your psychiatrist? What was the contact like?
Yeah, well, again, it was difficult because my psychiatrist he did come and see me on the wards, but it was always in the morning, first thing in the morning, and I'd just woken up, and I was on olanzapine now, on the antipsychotic and other drugs, and I remember it was horrible. It was awful waking up every morning. I was so half asleep and drowsy, and he'd come in, and it would just be a really difficult conversation. I was in my pajamas, and he'd sit and try and talk to me, and it was just really difficult. And I dreaded actually those interactions because, I was half asleep. I wasn't with it, and I just found it really difficult to communicate with him.
And did you communicate about diagnosis and about future?
It was really no. It was a lot of it was about the medication.
Okay.
Because I'd never been on medication before, and obviously the medication, he put me on the highest dose of olanzapine, and that it was pretty strong side effects, and lots of different kind of conversations about it. And every time I said to the staff. I felt suicidal. They put me on something, and there was lots of conversations about medication, which I couldn't really take in, to be honest.
How was it for you, Michael, visiting Johnny on the
Yeah,
ward?
very difficult. When he went into the hospital, basically we were told he was suicidal. We saw him take away all his things, so that, and they said we're going to put him on watch. We had no idea. No one explained to us what that meant. And basically, we were then just told, okay, these are the visiting hours, and if you want, you can come in and have lunch with him. And that was as much as we were told. We left the hospital, sat in the car, myself and my wife, literally not knowing what to do. As Johnny said, there were actually two nurses there, and I remember them very well as well, because also they used to come and talk to us as well. So we never really saw anybody at all to explain what the circumstance, what the situation was, and what was going to happen.
Yeah, okay. Must have been so confusing for you.
It was very confusing, and as I say, we had no idea. And things have moved on in over 10 years ago. Things have moved on, thank goodness. So there is people that will help, and people are more open now. But there was so much stigma.
Yeah.
And there's still stigma, but I can assure you 10 and a half years ago now, it was a big stigma on anything when you talk about mental health.
Yeah. Johnny, can you tell us what happened on that day when you went to the bridge? What kind of led up to that?
I've been in the hospital for a month, and I just got to a point where I just couldn't carry on. I felt I couldn't carry on. I mean, I was getting worse in the hospital. I started having panic attacks for the first time, and I'd never had panic attacks before. And it was after Christmas now, it was January, and the hospital got busier and busier, and I just found it really difficult. There was, it was a mixed ward at that time. It was a mixed ward, and all different ages, people who were really unwell, and some people were kind of threatening and had outbursts. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to leave my room. I was constantly being sent back to the suicide ward. I just had enough. I had enough after a month in the hospital, and I remember I made a decision to end my life on the 30th of January, 2008. Just one night, it just kind of something in me snapped. I just remember, something in me snapped, and I just said, I just can't carry on. I can't do this anymore. It's just unbearable. So the next morning, I left the hospital. Said I needed a cigarette in the morning, about 9 a.m. They let me outside for a cigarette, and then I was gone. I ran away, and I went to this bridge. It just seemed the only way. It seemed the only way out, really.
And then this stranger approaches. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so then this stranger, I was on the edge of this bridge, and this stranger came up to me and stood beside me. And he began talking to me, he began kind of asking me questions in a very kind of gentle and calm and kind way. But I didn't want to engage with him. It's quite rude. Because I didn't want him there, he was distracting me. But there was something about this stranger.
You take your time.
There's something different about this stranger, because he was, I don't know what it was. He was a young man like me, and he just the way that he gave me his time, he just had this real groundedness and this positivity, and he just gave me his full attention, and it was the way he listened, but it was also the things he said. There were two things he said that I remember that really struck a chord with me. The first thing was, he said, don't be embarrassed. Because that was the main reason that I'd run away, was this embarrassment, to be honest. I was embarrassed about everything in my head that I'd had to admit, and then my diagnosis, and also I was struggling with my sexuality, which was a big problem, because I come from a Jewish family, and big problem. But just for someone to say, don't be embarrassed, was such a relief. But I think the real key thing he said to me was just really he was really matter of fact. He just was really, matter of fact about it. He just said, I think you'll get better. I think you'll be all right. And I don't know, it was just hearing him say that, he said to me, come on, step away from the edge and let's go for a coffee. And I just felt, I just felt this, he had this positivity, I had this connection, I could trust him, I could tell him anything, and I just hadn't had that before. It was different. I'm not trying to criticise, but it was different to anything in the hospital that I'd experienced. You know, it wasn't. It was just really human. I don't know, connection. And so we were about to go for that coffee. I stepped over the edge, and we were about to go for that coffee. But then the police came along. Obviously, someone had alerted the police, and they came along while they were further down the bridge, and they jumped out their car and they ran towards me, and I panicked when they ran towards me, and I tried to get back over the bridge, and the guy grabbed me and stopped me, and then the police intervened, and that was it was a bit of a scuffle because I was quite agitated. So they restrained me and they handcuffed me, and then took me away, and we were separated.
You didn't see him again on that moment, and you were brought to A&E and put on a section and admitted back into hospital. Michael, how did you hear about this incident?
I was in central London, and I got a phone call from the hospital to tell me that Johnny had run away, and they didn't tell me the whole story, but they'd run away and he was on a bridge, and he's fine now. He's just been taken to St Thomas's Hospital and go to St Thomas's Hospital. In the meantime, I phoned my wife, and she said, what's happened? Because the police had just phoned me and said that Jonathan, we call him Jonathan, okay, everybody calls him Johnny, was caught on a bridge. She said, what's the story? I said, I don't know. So I rushed to St Thomas's, to the emergency room, and I asked where he was, and they said, oh, he's in that cubicle there. And I walked in, and he was completely by himself. There was absolutely nobody there. Obviously, he was just in a T-shirt. It was January, and had bruises on him, and T-shirt was dirty and whatever. And that was it. We were left alone. Eventually, the doctor came in and said he's going back to the hospital where he was, and that was it. And we sat there for another 2-3 hours waiting for somebody to come along and take us back. They wouldn't allow me to do anything. They wouldn't allow me to take him back.
So really, really traumatic experience for you.
Yeah, it was.
Johnny, you had you talk about quite a prolonged recovery, sort of symptomatic and sort of social functional recovery. It took you sort of 4 or 5 years. And then you decided you wanted to find the stranger. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I think it was in my mid-20s. It was in my mid-20s when I really began to sort of talk. And it was talking, kind of getting rid of that embarrassment and that shame and the level of acceptance about my mental health. I started making YouTube videos. It was easier talking to the camera than talking to someone. So I started making YouTube videos, and that led to me joining up with different mental health charities, and I got involved with one particular mental health charity called We Think Mental Illness. And I sat down with them one day and I told them my story, and they said to me, that guy on the bridge, have you ever thought of trying to find him and thank him? And I said, well, I can't remember much about him. How are we going to find him? And they said, why don't we launch a social media campaign to find him? And we did. We launched this social media campaign 6 years to the day that we met on the bridge. We launched it on Breakfast TV, and it kind of just took off and went viral. And the response was amazing, but he came forwards. He came forwards in like 2 weeks, and we were reunited.
What was that like when you finally met him?
It was amazing. It was amazing to, sit down and, say thank you and show my gratitude and show him how far I'd come. I was in a different place. It was really, really special.
And he is a really special guy, isn't he? And I know that Neil would have really liked to have been here today, but wasn't able to be. So we thought we'd sort of bring him into the conversation by playing a very short video, which I hope the technology will work.
Every year, I think, what happened to that guy? Did he ever go back, and did he take his life, and all those sorts of things? So yeah, it had really stuck with me.
I just thought that the best thing for me and for my parents as well was, if I wasn't here anymore, and I just thought it would just be best for everyone. So I went onto the edge of this bridge, and this stranger came up to me, and he began engaging with me, and he helped me over the edge of the bridge to the pavement. And I remember there was still the same really difficult stuff going on in my head, but I had some hope from talking to this stranger. But it was in my mid-20s, I started talking, I started making videos about my experience, and I said I want to help people. I struggled so much because I kept silent, because I was so embarrassed, because I was so ashamed. And I said I don't want anyone else to go through that. And then I decided to find the guy that stopped me on the bridge, because I wanted to thank him for what he did. It had such a massive impact on me. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it when they said to me, "We found the guy that you are looking for, that stopped you on the bridge." It was really special because I was obviously in a different place, and I was able to say, I've come a long way since that day on the bridge, and because of you, because of what you did, that's yeah. And it was really special to be able to sit down with him and to say that to him. It blows my mind when I think about what's come out of such a bad situation. Myself and Neil, we're going around and we are trying to spread this message of hope and recovery to as many people as we can, whether it be in the NHS, in prisons, or particularly for me, young people in schools, because if I'd have got that message when I was growing up, I think things would have been really different.
There aren't enough words to describe how special Johnny Benjamin is and how he's changed the lives of so many people.
Okay. So we've just got about 10 minutes left just to focus on your mental health campaigning, really. And I want to start with you, Michael. So how does it feel that your son has become a really high-profile campaigner?
Watching that is still very emotional. Doesn't matter how many times we watch it and we hear Johnny speak. But we're also so proud of what he's achieved with Neil. Neil was like a second son to us now. And we're thankful that he was in the right place at the right time, said the right words. But we're so proud of what Johnny's done. And when I've been at talks, people come up to him and want to talk to somebody on a one-to-one basis because he's been through it and he can explain. And I think also the major is the fact that there's hope as well. And he gives people hope. And that's what we try and do now, is talk to people, because we have parents come up to us who think there's nothing that they can do. And I think the biggest thing comes over is you've got to talk. And we talk now, sometimes in the car like this, because it's not face-to-face, but we talk. So the campaigning together, and the psychiatrist that Johnny now sees is fantastic. All helps us to... We know we have to be very careful because he overdoes things. He doesn't want to say no to anybody. So we know that we have to still watch, and watch for the signs. But at least now he talks about it. If he doesn't feel well, he tells us.
Yeah. And Johnny, since meeting you and joining you in some of the mental health campaigning events that you do, I've been struck by two things. Firstly, there's so many people and charities doing fantastic work campaigning to challenge stigma. you know, to raise mental health awareness, to fight for better, improved mental health services. And the second thing is, I think the majority of people in the room would want the same things. But what strikes me is our worlds are very separate. You know, our worlds don't seem to collide as much as we'd like. And I know Satnam Sanghera, he alluded to that on Sunday, that perhaps there's a misunderstanding between the world of sort of psychiatry and mental health campaigning. And there might be a bit of, sort of tension between the two worlds. And perhaps if we collaborated more, we could be stronger in, you know, campaigning for better services. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, Erin's an amazing person. Sorry, yeah, perfect example of someone that's trying to, you know, bridge that gap. You're doing amazing stuff. Yeah, I think there is a disconnect, which is such a shame. It is such a shame, and I think the media sometimes sort of create that disconnect because there's so much negative stuff about mental health services, and it create. We know there's long waiting lists, and yeah, we know there's underfunding, but you know that disconnect between people is so sad. It's so sad. There is a tension. I speak to people. There is a tension, and I wish we could collaborate more. And you know, we were joined together because there's one thing that we all agree on, and that is that, you know, mental health services are severely underfunded. We need more funding. We need more support. So if we can all agree on that, then I wish we could work together more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michael, finally, from your point of view, what would you say to a group of psychiatrists from a family's perspective?
I think I echo, obviously, what Johnny has said as well. And I think, and I know, obviously, there's the patient, you know, you can't say too much, but I think the family need to know. And I think the family can help if they're guided. I mean, we meet so many people that ask us, what should we do? Where should we go? And so I think the people that are campaigning are doing a fantastic job to get rid of the stigma and to get people talking. But then it needs the professionals then to take over and help. How do they get over this? How do they get over it? And I think, you know, as I said before, the psychiatrist that Johnny sees now, sees Johnny, then she sees us. Talks it over and also explains the medication, explains why he needs the medication. I mean, one story she told us very quickly was that, you know, someone that has diabetes has to take medicine or insulin. There isn't an actual cure, but however, you can control things, and it was the same, explain the situation of why he needs the medication. And when Johnny had a relapse last year, he phoned her. And the one thing that she said to us was, don't worry, he's going to be better, don't worry. So it's the fact of giving hope, because I think the problem is that people that are diagnosed with, they don't think there's any hope, because the media do not help. So I think it's the thing of, people have, you know, whether it's the charities or the campaigners or psychiatrists, they have one aim, which is to get people better and to give people hope. So they need to work together.
Thank you. So, Johnny, I'm going to give you the final word. I know that you have put together a mental health manifesto and you've got such hopes for mental health improving. Is there anything you'd want to say to a group of really friendly psychiatrists?
Well, I think thank you, because, you know, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for psychiatrists. And, you know, my psychiatrist now, I'm incredibly lucky because, my psychiatrist now is, you know, when I had my relapse last year and she came into my room in hospital and she saw me, she said, the first thing she said was, you're going to be all right. You know, you're going to get better. And just hearing that from her, just because I value, I actually, it might sound a bit weird, I look forward to seeing her.
Yeah.
I really do look forward to seeing her because I know she understands. I can talk to her. Things like side effects of my medication, you know, I can really talk to her about that. And she has answers for things now. Like, she has answers. Oh, you know, your libido, like, for example, we can do this, or you know, the weight gain. Or, do you know what I mean? She has answers, and I can talk to her, and I can talk to her about things that are going on. And I feel very lucky, and we need that. We need that sort of communication, that message of hope. And also she has this ability to, talk to my dad and talk to me. And I have to say thank you to my dad because, you know, honestly, like, again, I'm incredibly lucky. The support from my family is, again, I wouldn't be here.
We could, I know Evan would probably still want to, we could talk all day, but unfortunately we have run out of time. So I want you all to join me in thanking Johnny and Michael.
And thank you to you as well.
Yes, thank you so much for telling such a moving and powerful and instructive story. Thank you very much. Thank you.